Frank Sinatra was having a bad year. 1968. His album sales were down. His movies weren't doing well. The music industry was changing. The Beatles, the Rolling Stones, rock and roll. Frank's crooner style felt old-fashioned, out of touch. Meanwhile, Dean Martin was thriving. His TV show was #1. His records were selling. Everybody Love Somebody had knocked the Beatles off the top of the charts in 1964. Dean Martin, the guy Frank had always seen as a sidekick, was more successful, more relevant, more popular, and Frank hated it. He didn't say it out loud, but everyone knew. The Rat Pack reunion show at the Sands was supposed to be a celebration, a return to glory. Frank, Dean, and Sammy together again like the old days. But from the moment Frank walked on stage, something was wrong. He was hostile, sharp. When Dean joined him, Frank barely acknowledged him. Then came the roast segment. Frank turned to the audience. Dean's been doing pretty well lately, hasn't he? Applause. Dean smiled, acknowledged it. TV show hit. Records, real success. Frank paused, let the room quiet. Of course, it's easy to be successful when you're doing family-friendly garbage, when you're playing it safe, when you're not taking any risks. The audience didn't know how to react. Was this a joke? Dean's smile tightened. Frank continued, I could do what Dean does. I could water down my music, make it palatable for housewives and kids, but I have integrity. I have standards. And Dean Martin stood there, taking it, while Frank Sinatra publicly dismissed his success, called his work garbage, questioned his integrity in front of everyone. The room was silent, waiting to see how Dean would respond. What Dean did next shocked Frank. Silenced the room and left 2,500 people in tears. Early 1968, Frank Sinatra was 52 years old. He'd been on top for 25 years, the voice, the chairman of the board. But the world was changing faster than Frank could adapt. In 1967, his album Francis Albert Sinatra and Antonio Carlos Jobim had flopped commercially. His film Tony Rome did okay, but nothing special. Meanwhile, the charts were dominated by Aretha Franklin, The Doors, Jimi Hendrix. Frank's style of music, the big band swing, the crooner ballads, felt like it belonged to another era. Radio stations were dropping his songs. Young people didn't know who he was. For the first time in his career, Frank Sinatra felt irrelevant. Dean Martin was having the opposite experience. His variety show, The Dean Martin Show, launched in 1965, was a massive hit. Every Thursday night, 30 million people watched Dean sing, joke, and make it all look effortless. His records were selling. His Vegas shows were packed. In 1964, his single Everybody Loves Somebody had done the impossible. It knocked the Beatles A Hard Day's Night off the #1 spot. Dean Martin beat the Beatles. Frank never had. And that ate at Frank because Dean was supposed to be the sidekick, the funny guy, the supporting player. Frank was the star. Frank was the talent. That's how it had always been since 1960. Since the Rat Pack formed, Frank led and Dean followed. Frank got the spotlight. Dean got the laughs. It worked. But now Dean was bigger, more successful, more beloved, and Frank couldn't handle it. He'd make little comments, passive, aggressive jabs. Must be nice doing a TV show. Easy money. Or Dean's playing it safe these days. Can't blame him. Never direct, never honest. Just little cuts. Little reminders that Frank still saw himself as superior. Dean ignored it. He'd been friends with Frank for 15 years. Knew how Frank operated. Knew. Frank needed to feel like the leader. The alpha. Dean didn't care about that. Didn't need to prove anything. So he let Frank have his ego. Let Frank make his comments. It was easier than fighting. March 12, 1968. The Sands Hotel, Las Vegas. A Rat Pack reunion show was announced. Frank, Dean, and Sammy Davis Jr. together again like the old days. Tickets sold out immediately. Everyone wanted to see it. The Vegas magic, the brotherhood, the spontaneous comedy. Dean agreed to do it. He didn't need the money. Didn't need the publicity, but Frank asked. And you didn't say no to Frank. That's how their friendship worked. Frank asked, Dean showed up. Sammy showed up. They rehearsed the day before, or tried to. Frank was in a mood. Dark, aggressive, snapping at the stage crew, complaining about everything. Dean and Sammy exchanged looks. This wasn't the fun they remembered. This felt tense. The show started at 8 p.m. The Copa Room at the Sands. 2,500 people packed in. Wall-to-wall, standing room only. The energy was electric. People had waited years for this. Frank came out first. The crowd went wild. He sang, I've Got You Under My Skin. Still brilliant. Still powerful, but something was off. Frank seemed angry, like he was proving something instead of enjoying it. Sammy came out next, did his impressions, his dancing. The crowd loved him. Then Dean. Casual, relaxed, holding a drink. The drunk routine. The audience ate it up. He sang That's Amore. They sang along. Dean made it look easy, like he wasn't even trying. That was his gift. Effortlessness. The three of them together on stage. This was what people came for. The banter, the roasting, the chemistry. They started the routine. Sammy made a joke about Dean's drinking. Dean made a joke about Sammy's height. Standard stuff. Then Frank's turn. He looked at Dean. Dean's been doing pretty well lately, hasn't he? The audience applauded. Happy for Dean. Dean smiled. Shrugged. Been lucky. Lucky? Frank repeated. Yeah, I guess that's one word for it. The tone shifted. Not playful. Something else. Frank continued. Dean's TV show is #1. His records are selling. Everyone loves Dean Martin. Pause. Of course, it's easy to be successful when you're doing family-friendly garbage. The room went quiet. Did Frank just call Dean's work garbage? Dean's smile stayed, but his eyes changed. Frank kept going. Dean plays it safe. Makes music for housewives, 4 kids. Nothing challenging, nothing risky, just safe. Dean stood there. The audience didn't know how to react. Was this part of the bit? Sammy looked uncomfortable. Tried to jump in with a joke. Frank cut him off. I could do what Dean does. Frank's voice was louder now. I could water down my music. Make it palatable for the masses. But I have integrity. I have standards. I'm not interested in being popular. I'm interested in being good. The implication was clear. Dean was popular, but not good. Dean was successful, but not talented. Dean had sold out. Dean's face was still controlled, but everyone could see it. This hurt. This wasn't a joke. This was Frank Sinatra, his best friend for 15 years, publicly humiliating him, calling his work garbage, questioning his integrity in front of 2,500 people, in front of Las Vegas, in front of everyone. Frank seemed to realize he'd gone too far. Tried to walk it back with a smile, but the damage was done. The room was silent, waiting, watching Dean. What would he do? Laugh it off? Fight back? Walk away? Dean took a breath, stepped forward to the microphone. Frank stepped back, gave him space. Dean looked at the audience, then he spoke. Quiet, calm. Frank's right. My TV show is family-friendly. My music is safe. I don't push boundaries. I don't challenge anyone. Pause. Because I learned something a long time ago. Dean's voice stayed steady. Entertainment isn't about proving how talented you are. It's not about showing off. It's not about making people admire you. It's about making people happy. Dean looked at Frank. I make housewives happy. I make kids happy. I make people who work hard all week happy for an hour on Thursday night. And you know what, Frank? I'm proud of that. There's no shame in making people happy. No shame in being safe. No shame in being accessible. The audience started to react. Not laughing. Something else. Recognition. Dean continued. You say I don't have integrity because I play it safe, but I think there's integrity in showing up, in doing the work, and giving people what they want instead of what I think they should want. Dean's voice got quieter, softer. You call it garbage, Frank, but it's my garbage and millions of people love it. That's enough for me. The room was completely silent. Dean turned to leave the stage, then stopped, turned back. One more thing. You say you're not interested in being popular. You're interested in being good. But, Frank, if you're so good, why is nobody listening anymore? The room gasped. Dean Martin just said what everyone was thinking. Frank's career was declining. His music wasn't connecting. He was losing relevance. And Dean called him out publicly. Frank's face went white, then red. Dean walked off stage. Just walked away. Left Frank standing there, humiliated, exposed. Sammy didn't know what to do. The audience sat frozen. Then someone started clapping. One person, then two, then 10, then the entire room. 2,500 people giving Dean Martin a standing ovation. Not for his singing, not for his comedy, for his dignity, for standing up for himself, for defending his work, for refusing to be diminished. Frank stood on stage alone. The applause wasn't for him. It was for Dean, the guy he just called garbage, the guy he tried to humiliate. Frank walked off stage, went to his dressing room. Sammy tried to salvage the show, did a few more songs, but the magic was gone. Everyone knew what they'd witnessed. A friendship ending, a partnership dissolving, the Rat Pack dying in real time. Backstage, Dean was packing his things, getting ready to leave. Frank came to his dressing room, knocked. Dean didn't answer. Frank opened the door anyway. Dean, we need to talk. Dean didn't look at him. Nothing to talk about. Frank, I was joking. You know that. It's what we do. We roast each other. Dean turned, looked at Frank. That wasn't a roast. That was mean. There's a difference. Frank tried to deflect. You're being too sensitive. Dean shook his head. No, Frank. I'm being honest for once. You've been taking shots at me for years. Little comments, little digs. I let it go because we're friends. Because I didn't want to make it a thing. But tonight, you crossed a line. You called my work garbage in front of everyone. You questioned my integrity. You tried to make me feel small. And you know what the worst part is? Frank was silent. You did it because you're jealous. Because my career is going well and yours isn't. Because people love what I do and they're forgetting about you. And instead of being happy for me, your friend, you tried to tear me down. Frank's face showed everything. Anger, shame, hurt. Because Dean was right. Every word. I'm sorry, Frank said quietly. Dean nodded. I know you are. But sorry doesn't fix it. Frank looked at him. What do you want me to do? Dean picked up his bag. I want you to figure out why you needed to hurt me. Why my success threatens you. Why you can't just be happy for someone you call a brother, and until you figure that out, I don't think we should work together anymore. Frank's voice rose. You're ending the Rat Pack over this. Dean shook his head. You ended it tonight on stage. I'm just making it official. Dean walked past Frank, stopped at the door. For 15 years, I've been your friend, your supporter, your sidekick. I never asked for the spotlight, never competed with you, never needed to. But Frank, you were so busy worrying about being the best that you forgot how to be a friend. And that's the saddest part of all this. Dean left. Frank stood alone in the dressing room, realized what he'd done, what he'd lost. The Rat Pack performed together again only once in 1988, 20 years later, a charity event. They were older, grayer, the magic was gone. They sang a few songs, smiled for the cameras, but everyone knew that friendship, that brotherhood, that chemistry that made the Rat Pack legendary ended on March 12, 1968 in the Copa Room at the Sands Hotel when Frank Sinatra let jealousy destroy something beautiful. The audience that night told the story for years about the moment Dean Martin defended himself, about the standing ovation, about 2,500 people crying not because something sad happened but because something true happened, because they witnessed a man refused to be diminished, refused to accept someone else's definition of his worth, refused to let ego and jealousy go unchallenged. Dean Martin taught everyone in that room something important. Success isn't about being better than someone else. It's about being true to yourself. And integrity isn't about artistic standards or challenging boundaries. It's about treating people with respect, even when you're scared, even when you're jealous, even when they're more successful than you. Frank Sinatra's career did eventually recover. By the mid-1970s, he was relevant again, but he never forgot that night, never forgot what he'd lost. In 1990, 2 years after their final reunion, Frank gave an interview. The interviewer asked about the Rat Pack, about Dean. Frank was quiet for a long time. Then he said, Dean was the best of us. Not the most talented, not the most ambitious, but the best because he never needed to prove anything, never needed to be better than anyone. He just was who he was, and people loved him for it. I spent so much time trying to be the greatest that I forgot how to be a friend, and Dean never forgot. The interviewer asked, do you regret what happened in 1968? Frank nodded, tears in his eyes. Every day I hurt my best friend because I was insecure, because I couldn't handle his success. That's not something you get over. You just live with it. Dean Martin died in 1995. Frank Sinatra died in 1998. They reconciled somewhat in their final years, but it was never the same. The trust was gone. The brotherhood fractured, and everyone who was there that night at the Sands carried the memory. The night Frank Sinatra destroyed Dean Martin on stage. And the night Dean Martin showed Frank and the world what real integrity looks like. Not artistic, not professional, human integrity. The kind that says, you can't make me small. You can't define my worth. And I won't let your insecurity become my shame. If this story moved you, subscribe and hit thumbs up. Share with someone who's ever been diminished by a friend's jealousy. Have you ever had to defend your success to someone who should have celebrated it? Let us know in comments. Ring that bell for more Dean Martin stories about dignity and strength.